Well, welcome to our session, Learn Tips for Taking Teams to the Next Level. This is part two of a two-part series. My name is Sarah. I'm your tour guide today. I'm excited to show you some more ideas about how to use Teams features, maybe features you've never seen before, maybe ones that are new, but you've using them in a new way, in a strategic way. And again, this class is a two-part series. So maybe you've already taken part one, or you're going to be taking that one a little bit later. But part one is all about effective workspaces. It's all about strategic ways of setting up your teams. Do you want to use chats, group chats? Do you want to use teams and channels? And exploring different scenarios for setting up your workspaces. And in this class, we're going to actually be more tactical. We're going to be exploring different features and strategies and best practices, if you will, for getting more from teams. And so some of that is just being ways of making our communication pop, or being ways to be more efficient, more productive for ourselves and also for our colleagues. So what are we covering? Well, after this session, you'll be able to use different strategies, different features to manage and organize your work, your workspace in Teams, as well as the content that you're accessing. And we're going to explore a lot of different ways to make communication more meaningful, more effective. How can you use rich text or graphics or even other apps to make that information um, get noticed? And then also making sure that people are responding to it. How do you know that information? Ways that you can manage your files and find those files, and different projects you might be working on or chats, ways that you can interact with them, and just different shortcuts here and there. A lot of it is how you communicate, and a lot of it also, because Teams is so collaborative, are strategies that are going to encourage participation with your colleagues, because the more people who are using Teams in your network, then the more collectively you all can be efficient and productive. So we're going to give you lots of ideas in that scenarios moving forward. So let's go ahead and get started here. And we're just going to jump right in to our Teams demo. Okay. And I want to begin with some tips and tricks about effective communication, because a lot of what we do in Teams is chatting or having conversations with our colleagues. That could be communication, also collaboration. So, what are some things that we might want to be aware of? So, let's start off with something pretty simple. We're going to go ahead and send a chat to someone. I'm just going to put in a hello chat, and I'll go ahead and send that. And oops, I misspelled it. Does this ever happen to you where you send something and there's a typo? And you know, you can actually edit your conversations, but there's a keyboard shortcut. If you use the up arrow, that is a great way to go back to the item you just sent. That up arrow lets you get in, edit it, and then you can make changes to this message. I could even right click to fix it. And then I'm going to go ahead and press enter to send it out. So obviously we can hover on a message, we can use that ellipses and we can edit it, but that's a lot of clicks. And just being able to use our up arrow is a really nice option to jump back in. And you can press escape or enter to either exit or move into those, or commit those actions. Now, I'd love to also tell you more about the expand compose box. There's a tool right below your compose box, and it looks like an A with a paintbrush. And we click on that format tool, it's going to expand your compose box. In fact, this is a toggle. You can click on that tool and it will expand and collapse. And if you're easily amused like I am, you can do that for a long time, right? So there it is. It's fantastic. And when you expand the compose box, you are able to use a lot more other rich text formatting options. One of the things I like just straight away is the fact that I can press enter, right? A lot of times I want to write a longer message, or I want to take a little bit more time with my message. I don't want to just send it and it sends it out. I have to go back and edit it. So I can spend a little bit more time making this message what I want to say. I'm going to go ahead and backspace a few times here. And I'm going to put a message. We've been working on some comms. We've been working on different options. So did you see the message sent? And, if I want to draw attention to something specific, maybe a due date, due by, and I want to put in Friday or whatever information is in there. Boy, I sure need some help typing there. Due by Friday. I could actually go in and set up some things like bold, change the font color, make it a different highlight, right? You got lots of options in how you can draw attention to elements. And of course, we could also mark that as important if we wanted to. We could mark the status. But I'm going to go ahead and press enter. I want Alex, this is my contact I'm working with, I want him to be able to reference some files so that he can better respond. Now we know that we can use the paperclip at the bottom. We can use that to attach files, and they could be anywhere in our system locally, or we could go to OneDrive, we could access files. But sometimes we don't want to actually attach a file, we just want to make a link. We want to put a link somewhere, and it might even be a file we've already worked with. I'm going to show you an example. I'm going to go ahead and access the files up here. This is our tab line, and these have all the different files that Alex and I are working on. And I want him to take a moment to review the marketing plan. So I'm going to go ahead and send him a link. And over on the very far right-hand side, there's an ellipses where you can click for more options, or right click. You can do that as well. We're going to go ahead and get that link. And it's a really long link, but that's okay. Copy that. We'll jump back to our conversation. And what's great is our conversation is still here. It's still waiting for us. So I'm going to put in the message to make sure I'm on the right line. Please review. And I can paste that link in, right? Right click or control V to paste in. And that is pretty ridiculous. That's pretty awful. So let's go ahead and show you an option that I really like. I'm going to go undo a couple times here. Control Z. If you're a Mac, Control Z is really Command Z, right? And there is a tool in our compose box that looks like a chain link, and this is where you can put in text-friendly links. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And I'm going to put in a note to our manage plan. And just down below, either right click to paste or to control V to paste. Bring that in, insert, and we've got a nice clean link. And to just take this to one step further, keep in mind that you can go anywhere in your system to find these links. So maybe you're going somewhere else in Teams outside of this chat. Maybe you're going to a website or to another portal where there's some shared information that you want to give to Alex. And I'm just going to go to a place where we have lots of extra files. So I'll go to my files menu, which is over in the purple left rail here. And I've got a lot of files. These are all recent files we've been working on. And I see one about the shoe promotional that I want to share with Alex. And I'm just going to, at this point, I'm going to assume that we already have access to this file. I'm not going to worry about sharing at this point. I just want to show you how we can get this link and we can go back into chat and we are still going to be in our conversation, right? We're just right back where we left off. So it gives us the flexibility of navigating. And I'm going to put in see also, and let's add our text-friendly link, see also template. That in. Looks good. And then I'm going to go ahead and just for fun, add some review by Friday, review by Thursday. How about that? And as I start putting in my emoji, I am prompted for some keyboard shortcuts to jump into my emojis. All right, so if I want to pick one in there that's a little sassy, here we go. I can put that in there, review by Thursday. And I'll go ahead and send that message. So there you go. Lots of great shortcuts that we get by just opening up that compose box. And I want to show you a few extra things. I really do enjoy or appreciate, I should say, this compose box. It gives us lots of options. And so first of all, when we expand the compose box, we got that button that can turn it on or off. There are some keyboard shortcuts that might be handy. I am a bit of a keyboard junkie. So you don't have to be one, but if I do Control Shift X, Control Shift X is a toggle. And obviously, if you're a Mac, then Control becomes Command, right? Command Shift X. But you can toggle that back and forth. And I'm going to go ahead and copy. I have some written out for you, so I don't have to type it all in. I can bring that in. Looks really good. Uh, one of the things I like in the compose box is I can clear formatting. When I copy and paste information in, a lot of times it comes in with some strange formatting. So I can go ahead and clear that formatting so it looks nice and clean. And then of course, if I press enter, I'm getting a carriage return. So it's not sending it. If you want to send the message, I'll give you another shortcut here. If you want to send the message, you can do a control enter. Let's go ahead and clear the formatting on all of this. Oops, looks like it's looks like it kept the bullet. So there you go. And in fact, why don't I just make that a bullet to points? Looks good. So control enter, looks fantastic, sent that out. And again, I am a bit of a keyboard junkie. I love keyboard shortcuts. You may or may not love keyboard shortcuts the way I do, but for the ones that you like the most, there's actually a great place where you can go and find all the keyboard shortcuts that you want to use. And at the very top of your screen in your profile badge, there is a shortcut to keyboards shortcuts. So a list of all the hotkeys. And this list is actually going to track to the platform, the device that you're in. So right now I'm using a PC and I'm using a browser. And so it's looking at those different shortcuts. But if you were using a Mac or you were using a desktop app and you wanted to find out what other options are, or you're supporting other folks who use all kinds of platforms, at the very bottom, there is a link to the website, See Shortcuts for All Platforms. So we'll go ahead and click on that. And here we can actually find lots of shortcuts. This one in case for Windows, right? And I looked at the top of this page, there was Mac OS. So fantastic ways to stay connected. And then these websites can get updated by Microsoft as well to give us more information. There, I see that command again. So I won't give you all the keyboard shortcuts, but if you like them and you like to learn new things, there you go. There are some places where you can explore that. Okay, I do want to show you though some more things about the compose box. So we could use our keyboard shortcut, we could use our mouse either way. And another feature I want to mention has to do with the quotation mark. This is actually a great format to draw attention to questions, to copy and paste of information. So for example, let's say a client asks you a question, you want to ask your manager about it, or you want to ask a colleague, hey, how would you answer this? Another way that we use it is if we want to track back to a previous comment. So I'm going to scroll up a little bit. And I noticed that Alex mentioned something about the printer, and I wanted to respond to that. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight his text. And again, I can copy Control C or right click and copy that. I'm going to come back here and I'm say, in response to your, all right. And then in the quote format, we'll go ahead and paste that information in. And I'll say we've updated, you know, printer. We've loaded it with toner, whatever you're going to type in, right? Less typing for me. We've updated printer. Works good. And I could put an emoji in there for fun if I wanted to. Or you know what? You can, here's another place where you can get find emojis. If you use the Windows key, Windows period, it's going to open up more emojis in here. Windows period, and you've got all kinds of emoji. Whoa. And I can come over to I think I'm going to go to the pizzas and I'll put a pizza in there just because why not? It's random. um, but you get the idea. There's lots of ways that you can connect. So fun things to do. All right. Something else that we often use to communicate is working with code, a little bit more technical, right? And maybe you are a coder. Maybe you work with coders directly and you're sharing snippets and you're using Teams as a way to collaborate on different projects. Or maybe you're more like me. I'm not necessarily a coder, but I might do a couple hacks here and there. Seems like I'm always looking for that one CSS snippet that I'm using to update the SharePoint web page, And so if I wanted to add that information, either a single line statement or a block, the compose gives us some great information to do that as well. So I'm going to go in here to my compose box, and over on the very far right hand side, there's an ellipses where you can access the code snippet. And here is where we could put in a line of text. And keep in mind that there are a lot of formats that are baked in. So if we click on the drop down at the very top where it says text, you're going to see lots of options that we can jump into. And as I'm scrolling through here, you might recognize some of these. You might think, oh, I know this one. Oh, I want to learn that one. I've never heard of that one. I don't know. It's up to you, right? I'm going to go back to CSS over here. Um, there's a quick line of code I want to bring in, and I'm going to show you what it looks like when I copy in this code. It automatically gets formatted to map to the code structure. So it's very clean. Handy too if I bring in several lines as well. And then I can put a note. Here's the snippet for the SharePoint web page, or whatever it is that we were looking for, right? And I'll go ahead and send that out. So now I've got this information, and Alex and I can reference it. And you know how sometimes you put something in Teams and you want to go back and review it, right? You know that you can mark it as unread, of course. You can use that ellipses and you can mark as unread. And that's great when you want to go back and review it tomorrow. But one of the things I love to be able to do is to bookmark or save content. So this might be something I want to review, not just tomorrow, but maybe next week or next month. I know I had it somewhere. What was it called? So I'm going to go ahead and save this message. And you might have noticed in the top right-hand corner, it actually flashed right below your profile badge, saved. And that's because your profile is where you go to access these saved messages. So let's go ahead and access these saved. They're more like bookmarks, right? And so here I can actually jump to the bookmark, and I see some other options in here. Here's something that I wanted to remember that Grady wrote about. It turns kind of a pale yellow color to help me see it. And these might go back in the past information, right? If I'm no longer using this information and it's no longer relevant to me, you can always unsave, hover on that item, just unsave it, and then it's no longer there. I mean, it's still there, but it's not tagged the same way. So you have some ways to quickly jump in. All right. I also want to point out something about status alerts. Now, you know that you can use the exclamation point and you can make something important or urgent, but it's a little bit different when you have a file that you've already sent or a comment you've already sent. So I had some information about the due by Friday, and I'm thinking, you know what? I think I want to make this important so Alex really sees it. And I go in to edit the item. Where is the exclamation point? Now, you never know. It might still be there depending on how Teams is configured, but keep in mind that when you go to format, a lot of times there's more things hidden than what you might expect. And so when I edit the item, I go to format, there's an ellipses in here, and hey, now I can mark it as important so it stands out. Go ahead and, so there's a good tip and trick for you too. Well, here's something else that people often ask about. They often ask about screenshots. Do you take a lot of screenshots? I do for training. Maybe you do for troubleshooting, or maybe you go to web pages and you're taking screenshots because you're in marketing or sales or HR. You're looking at different pages for whatever content. And then you share that screenshot with somebody and it looks a little bit different. So we often get questions of how do I access that screenshot? Can I download it? Can I make it a file? So I want to show you some information about that. I have a screenshot here in my app, Snip and Sketch. This is a Windows app that's part of Windows. It's pretty easy to get to. And I'm just going to copy. All right, close that out. And I'm going to paste that app right in. Control V, paste it in, or paste that, I should say, that that screen, that image. So there it is. There's the image. It's been pasted in. Fantastic. If you can read it, you have really good eyesight, but it's pretty small. But here's something that you may not know. You click on the graphic and it gets bigger. Oh, it's so much better. It gets bigger. And then, of course, you can come to the top, right-hand corner, and you have some ways to make it even larger or smaller, depending on what you need. And then here's another great option. There is a tool that looks kind of like an arrow pointing down. That's where you can download it. So if you wanted to capture this image as an actual file, you could download it. And depending on how your system is set up, that'll determine what file format you get. But there you go. You can also, I'm going to go ahead and close this. You can also drag and drop files, graphics into your um, compose box, or you can bring them into your files. And I know that we have some graphics like pings and such. Here I see some ping files, and I think there's some JPEGs in there as well. So it's very easy to share graphics in one way or another. Now, another thing that is always helpful is to think about how to keep our messages engaging. We've been focusing on how to keep it relevant, um, but one of the ways that we can actually have teams be more productive is if more people in our organization are using Teams and are able to connect and stay in the conversation. And so if you think about conversations that are more like real world conversations, they're going to have things like um, business, and this is what we're working on, but they also have things like congratulations, or here's some milestones or kudos. And so I encourage you to incorporate into your conversations all the real world types of things that we normally have. And one option, of course, is to use the graphics. It is a great way to build rapport. We've been doing quite a bit about printers. I think there's a good one about printers, so let's just see. I think, let's see here. Was there? Oh, this was a good one. I think I'll do this one. You could probably relate to that. I think Alex would appreciate this when he saw it, this message. But something else that we can do to build rapport is we can share praises. And so I want to point out your compose box has this in ellipses. And whenever you see ellipses, it means click me, right? It means there's more mess options. So we click on this and we're going to see interesting ideas. And my list is probably going to look different from your list because Teams is extensible. And maybe I've added certain things, or maybe you've added certain things that I don't have here. But keep in mind that you can go and add more apps, right? You can click more apps and go to the store. Or if there are certain apps that you tried and you're like, I don't think I want that anymore, you can use the ellipses and you can remove them from your list here so that you don't see easy access. But I want to point out an app that's great for building reports called the Praise app. And maybe I just want to point out something. Hey, Alex has been really creative when he's been working on the comms one pagers. Look awesome. And I'll go ahead and take one more look at that and go ahead and send it. And so now this is another way to share information. And what I'm showing you here in this private chat, obviously you can also do in a group chat as well. So we've been really focusing a lot on our conversations or chats. I want to give you a few extra insights when it comes to channel conversations. So let's jump over to Teams, and I'm going to jump into, looks like we're just a second while it's updating here. Here we go. Give it a chance. All right, there we go. So we're going to jump over into Teams, and we're going to jump over into our Team Sync. So when you are working with channels, those are all part of a team, right? And to me, the main difference between a chat versus a channel is a chat is a little bit more informal. It's great for these one-off conversations. It's great for building rapport or doing like a sidebar. Whereas teams are all about having one source of truth. They're all about giving visibility to all the people within that project or in that work group so everyone's connected. And then the channels themselves help us organize them. Teams and channels tend to be more robust than your chats, right? You could support more people, you have access to more apps. And with that said, your conversations are a little bit more robust. So you can do all the things that we saw earlier, but you also have some ways of setting up um, a threaded conversation. And I want to point out an example where we can have a threaded conversation. We're going to expand our compose box. Again, we could use our mouse or our keyboard. And we've been looking at some new hire candidates. So let's put that as our subject, new hire candidates. We are starting the process. Okay, so Adele's sending this message out, and this message has a subject line that folks can reply to. So instead of going down like a chat where it's rapid fire instant, we can continue and reply to that message. Also, you can have messages, let's go ahead and expand this, that start with a huge banner, like an announcement, right? And I'll give you an example of that. Let's go ahead and close this out for a second. Notice how Labor Day is very eye-catching. It's got this banner, this announcement banner, and you can give it a color, you can give it a graphic as well. I also like the idea that as people are connecting to these conversations and they're commenting, replying, the conversations actually will shift so that you can see the most recent information. So let's go ahead and do a quick reply. And I'll put in actually, um, let's do at Henrietta is working on this. Okay, go ahead and send that message out. And let me just show you as I switch to a channel and then come back. Did you notice how now that new budgets channel floats to the bottom? So the most current information shows up at the bottom. It's easy to access. And it reminds me of email threads, right? Where you're sending out a message and the reply, reply, reply. And many people ask, is there a way to do less email and more Teams, right? So Teams isn't necessarily replacing email, but you can start having more of your conversations in Teams. And I found that I tend to use Teams more and email less now that I've become more familiar with Teams. So I want to give you some examples of what this would look like. We're going to go to a channel called Forecasting that has some samples pre-cooked for us. And so we were working on this email thread about forecasting, and we had an email conversation back and forth, and we wanted to bring this into Teams. And so if I go ahead and expand this, I can actually see more. I can see the original email thread. I can download and get all the details in case there was something missing. And then I can see that this conversation is now being continued inside of Teams. So how do we set that up? Well, the channel itself has an ellipses. So you click that ellipses and you can go to get email address, bring that in. And then you're going to copy this email address and you're going to go back to Outlook or wherever the email is. And you're going to reply to all, include this email address as one of the recipients. I mean, it's obviously really long, but you're going to include that email address. And then that will automatically forward the information into Teams. So that's really how easy it is. There are a few advanced settings. So let's just point out advanced settings. So if you wanted to control who can post information. So for example, we have it set up so only members of the team are going to be able to contribute to this conversation moving forward, right? So we have some options there. And the other thing to keep in mind is that change takes time, right? So change is tricky. So you might have people who just resist just because, it's human nature to resist resist things that are new. And so I always encourage you to gently remind them. You also might have people with really good intentions, like, oh, that sounds like a great idea, but they just forget, right? So again, a really good tip and trick is to always gently remind people. So if you see conversations kind of floating back into email, you can just remind people, hey, we're bringing this conversation back into Teams, and you can continue the chat conversation moving in here, and away it goes. So There you go. And again, we got there by using that ellipses and accessing our email. Now, also connected to this idea are the idea of connectors. So let's tell you more about what this is all about. I'm going to go to newsfeed here. So connectors are a way that you can have information pushed into Teams from different resources. So besides Teams information, you can have it feed in. And Being News is one example. This particular team, they are located in a particular region. They're all connected in the Northwest region. And so we have a special channel that's feeding them news about that Northwest region. That's the big idea. So if I want to set up a connector, the first thing I would recommend is a really good tip and trick is to start by adding a channel. There's a lot of noise, a lot of traffic that comes in with this news feed. So having its own dedicated channel can really help keep it organized and streamlined. And then once you have the channel, you can use the ellipses and you can go into connectors. And there are a lot of different options. I'm seeing some ideas that are just suggestions like Yammer, Azure DevOps. Let's say you're interested in news and social. Ooh, there's Twitter, there's Facebook pages, SharePoint News. Maybe you're in charge of marketing. You're thinking, ooh, MailChimp, that would be really helpful. Maybe you are a developer and you're looking at these ideas like GitHub. Ooh, I like that, right? So you can have a list of different um, codes and access to that. So the idea is you can find whatever is helpful for you, and then you can add or configure as needed, right? You simply click on it. Some of these are third-party tools, and you may have to set up a subscription, or there may be a free subscription or a paid one, right? So just keep that in mind. And then once you have it set up, over on the far right-hand side, you'll see you can manage your accounts, and I've configured Bing, and I can come back and I can make a new Bing news feed if I wanted to, or I can go back to one that I've already created and I can manage it, which was actually helpful for me in real world because when I first set it up, I mistyped Northwest, and so I wasn't getting the feeds that I was looking for. So again, you can update this. But let me give you an example where this could be handy. Let's go back to news and social, for example. What if you had a team for your SMEs, maybe your help desk or something like that? And these were folks who were answering a lot of questions and they were able to collaborate, but they were capturing the information coming in through Yammer or through Twitter or some other resource. People were able to share information or share insights. And then this group could have a channel that helped them capture that information in Teams. And then they could even have another channel that helped them configure like messaging or training or whatever that could help address some of those needs that people had. So those are some ideas of how you might use these different connectors as well. All right. So we've been talking a lot about conversations. What I want to do next is really explore more of files and file management because we get a lot of questions about how can I be more productive with my files? How can I find that information? Who sees that information, etc. So let's go ahead and jump back into chat and I'll show you some things about that. So in our conversation here, in fact, let's go to our group chat. In our conversation, we have a list of all the different files. And if I click on the tab line, go to files, I can see the files that we've shared. Whenever somebody shares a file to chat, it gets stored in that person's OneDrive, and then Team automatically shares it with all the people in the chat group. So Alex, Grady, and Pradeep actually have sharing rights to all this information, although the file might live in one or another person's OneDrive. Now, the particular files themselves, did you know that you could make them their own tab? So you can make vendors its own tab, and that could be really handy if you need to do a lot of work. I click on vendors, and I think this one, yeah, this one needs a lot of work. We've got a lot of work to do. So make it its own tab so that it's easy to jump into. And then once you make it a tab, you can work on it. If you're no longer using it anymore, it's no longer active, you can actually go ahead and just remove the tab. That's another good tip and trick. Maybe the project is over and you want to clean up the clutter. These tabs are communal, right? Everybody has access to all these tabs together. So if you wanted to share a file, make it a tab, you come over to your list and you're going to find an item. So for example, forecasting trends, and you use that ellipses and oh, excuse me, I take that back. Let me rephrase that. If you want to make it a tab in chat, you go to the plus sign on your tab line. So there's the plus sign. And then you make sure that you pick the right app. So in this case, this was, I think it was a Word file, but there it is. It's a Word file. I can see the options that I'm looking for. Here's my marketing plan. Now at the top, do I want to call it Word? That seems like a kind of a strange name. So might want to call this marketing plan. Seems better. And then down below, you can post a note about this. Let's go ahead and save this information so we'll see this looks like. We've added a link, a tab at the top that people can use and reference at any time. We'll go back to our conversation and we'll see that a tab has been added, so we have access to that. And actually, these tabs can be moved around as well. So you can drag and drop tabs. So if it helps you stay organized, you have some options like that. And then keep in mind that you can always remove those tabs as needed. So great way to stay connected. In chats, we saw the option. In channels, it's a little bit different. If I go here to forecasting, in channels, we have this file that's been saved. You can actually go to the ellipses and you can make it a tab. So there's a little shortcut that you can use, or you can use that plus sign to get connected as well. All right. Um, People have also asked about who has access to the file. If you are in a team, you have access to the files. Teams are all about visibility. So if I'm part of the Northwest team, you're a member of that team, then you have visibility to all the files in this conversation. So no matter which channel it's in, you have access to it. And it's backed up in SharePoint. And sometimes people wonder, okay, so can I still get to that? Can I review it? And the truth is, you don't really have to, because Teams is managing all the sharing and versioning and all that stuff on the back end. But people say, okay, I know that, but I still would feel more comfortable if I can get to it. So fair enough, right? So I want you to know that when you're in a channel and you're in the Files tab, there's going to be a link to open in SharePoint. So the team itself is its own SharePoint site collection. And then each channel represents a folder in the documents library. So right now I'm looking at the forecasting folder, and there's a breadcrumb. We can click on the breadcrumb to go back to documents, and we can see all the different folders in here as well. So for example, we had a folder called Team Sync. Let's go ahead and click on that. And then we can see some different options. And just like in SharePoint, that main that main portal, you have options like in ellipses where you can explore different features, including version history. People ask about that quite a bit. And keep in mind that the Teams SharePoint is not meant to be as robust as an actual SharePoint portal. It's meant to be a backend that supports your Teams content. That being said, you can get here and you can explore it and maybe do some extra SharePoint things. Now at the top, we're going to go ahead and close that tab. Just open it up as a web, and we're going to jump back in to Teams, right? So easy access. Now let's go ahead and explore this in chat. Let's go take a look in chat. And we have these files that are in here. We're looking at these conversations. And we want to see a little bit more about this. How do we see who has access and where these things live? What I like doing is going to the Files menu, right? We saw this in the earlier. And in the Files menu, we see a lot of information. First of all, we see our recent files. This is an easy way to find stuff that you were working on recently. And you can even search by when did you last modify it? Where is it located? Right? You can search. You see Microsoft Teams. These are actually SharePoint files because these are the files that live in channels. There's a part of Teams and channels. And then there's your OneDrive. So this is actually a great way to connect to your OneDrive. You'll see some different folders in here, and there's a button that says Open in OneDrive. And when you open it in OneDrive, you're going to be able to see the back end. Now, there's a folder called Microsoft Teams chat files. These are all the files that you've stored that you personally have shared with chat. And if you want to look at any one of them, you can click on the ellipses, right, and get details, including version history, right? And people often have questions about the shared information. There's a column for shared. And here's where you can see who has access to that information. Do you want to stop sharing? Do you want to grant access to a file? All right. Do you want to change the privileges that one of these people have? So you can come in here and you can manage it more strategically on the back end as well. I'm going to use the breadcrumb here to go back to files. And I want to point out something else. There's a folder called Microsoft Teams data, and there's another folder buried in there called Wiki. When you use meetings, right, and you take meeting notes, remember how these meeting notes are wiki-based notes? This is where your meeting notes live. So if you're the person who started the wiki, you're the person who started that meeting note, it's going to be stored in your OneDrive, and there you go. That's where it all lives. And again, we can use our breadcrumb to jump back. Notebooks is actually referring to OneNote files that you might have in the cloud in here and maybe are accessible through Teams as well. Not necessarily your your Teams and channels notebooks, right? But your personal notebook that's chat based. So again, you can take a deep dive. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. We don't have to do backup management in Teams, and people go, I know, but I just want to know where it is. I feel more comfortable. So there you go, a couple places. I want to point out one other little shortcut. Let's go back to chat. And most of the products here have versioning built in. So here's an example of our budget plan agenda. And I'm going to use the ellipses to open this in the browser and give it a moment here to load. And it's typically in the file menu, especially for these Microsoft apps. I'm looking for info. And again, it could change a little bit based on what version of Word you're using, etc. But I'm noticing here in info, I actually have version history. So you don't necessarily have to dig deep to find other versions and etc. They're being backed up. The whole point about Teams is that you have shared collaborative files. So if people make a change, you're all seeing the change. All that information is connected. All right, let's go ahead and close that. We'll jump back in. So here's another question people ask. What if I'm in a group chat and I add people to the group chat? Will they have access to these files? Great question. So I'm going to go ahead to the far right hand corner to add people into this group chat. And I want to bring Megan in. Now, notice that the default option, whoops, there we go. The default option is to not include chat history. So that means that when I bring Megan in, she's not going to see anything until this point forward. So I can connect her. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in. It also means that Megan doesn't have any access or privileges to those files. Those files are part of the chat history. And so she's not going to see them. If I wanted to give her specific access to information, I could share a file. So I could come over here to the paperclip, go to my OneDrive. I've got some file that I want to share with her. Microsoft Teams chat. Here's our budget planning agenda. Go ahead and share that file. And now Megan does have access to this. It's been added. It's been updated. But what if you decided, oh, you know what? We really need Megan to have a lot more access to all this information. That was kind of a mistake when we brought her in and we cut her cut her off. So what you can do, here's a good tip and trick. You can actually remove Megan and bring her back in. So you can come down here, remove Megan. In fact, you might remove her for other reasons. Maybe she's no longer part of your team. She's no longer in this role. But in this case, we're removing her so that we could add her back in but include all chat history, or maybe include chat history for the last, what, 30 days, 50 days. You get the idea, right? So some options you can have for that. All right. Next thing I'm going to do is take a closer look at tips and tricks for their actual teams and managing those teams. So in our first class, our tips one, we do a lot of strategy about when might I do a group chat, when might I do a team. But I want to give you some extra tactical tips and tricks when it comes to managing your teams and being a great team owner or even a team member. What are some things you might want to be aware of? So the first one thing I want to point out is when you come down to the bottom left corner where it says join or create a team, you can create teams that are based on templates. And this would actually be a really good strategy if you have a recurring theme. So, for example, let's say that you're doing budgets and every quarter or every year you have to do a whole nother project, right? You can actually use the option to create from an existing to copy and paste an existing team or duplicate an existing team, and it's going to copy the structure. So how the channels, you can choose to add members if you want. So you have lots of ways that you can customize it, and it saves you the steps of having to rebuild everything. You still build the content, but the structure is still there. So I like that tip and trick. Another tip and trick I really like is this idea of joining a team with a code. So if you have a lot of teams in your organization, you're trying to find which team it is, it might be handy if your owner gives you a code and says, here, use this code to specifically find the team that you want. Or like my colleague Debbie, she is often um, presenting these onboarding classes and saying, okay, folks, if you want to join this team, I'm going to send you an email here with the code and you can use it to join the team. So it saves her a lot of hassle having to upload everybody by hand. They can join and then she can connect them. So I love that option as well. So we'll come back and I'll show you the back end of that. But the next thing I want to point out is that as a team owner and maybe even as a team member, it's a great idea to do kind of a settings audit. And we'll just find out like, do I have everything I need? So let's go ahead and manage the team. Click on this option and see what we have. So if you're the owner, you're going to see a lot of options. If you're the not an owner, a member, you're going to see fewer options, but there's still some good ones to point out. As an owner, here's a good tip and trick. Have more than one owner. It's always great to have a backup, somebody who can manage. Yes, IT is a back door. They can help you get in and fix things in case you lock yourself out, but it's still great to have someone on the front end who can manage these owner tasks. So have a second owner. Another tip and trick is that you cannot have zero owners. So if Grady left, then Adele would not be able to leave automatically. We do have questions. Sometimes people ask, oh, hey, what if everybody's gone and the team is kind of old and how does it take care of itself when it's no longer being in use? Your IT admin can set up retention policies, including expiration dates of teams. And so again, Teams is extensible. Reach out to your IT folks or your support to find out if that's what you're using, is that's a policy or not. But if you had an expiration date, then the owners would get an email notification saying, hey, your team is about to expire. Would you like to renew it? If you renew it, then obviously you can keep going. And if you don't renew it, then it can get archived and put away and, reused, recycled, if you will. So lots of tips and tricks here. Okay, another one I want to point out has to do with settings. There's some really fantastic features in here that we should explore. You can change your team picture, your avatar. Notice how product rollout has a calendar icon. That might be more helpful for people to find it. You might have a logo or a photo of somebody as opposed to just the square with some letters in it. Also, it's a great idea for team owners to go in and do like a settings audit about your member permissions. By default, your members have access to all of this information. Do you want them to be able to do all these things? Do you want your members to be able to add channels, delete channels, restore channels? What about apps? Do you want your members to be able to add apps and remove apps, or the tabs, or the connectors? Or have you ever wondered why, how come I can't seem to delete this conversation or edit my own comment, right? That feature might have been turned off. So those are some things that your owners can set up. Another thing your owners may want to do is explore the general channel. So by default, anybody can post messages on the general channel. That's that default channel that shows up at the top. However, here's a good tip and trick, we found that we like to go in and change that so that only owners can post messages. What this does is it forces your members to actually use the channels. So if you've taken time to set up channels and help you organize the work stream, and you don't want people just posting stuff in general, you want them to actually use the forecasting channel or the special events channel or the team sync channel, right? This will make them use a particular channel as opposed to just dumping it. It's also great if people aren't familiar with Teams and they don't really understand that there's channels here to connect. So again, some great features in there you can explore. Um, you can also turn on and off the app mentions. So if you wanted your folks to be able to app mention everybody with a team, this is a great way to send alerts to the whole group. And the only catch is it generates a lot of extra alerts and traffic. So if you're thinking, okay, we have too much traffic, I want to lock that down, you can uncheck the ability for people to um, mention teams and channels, right? Although if you want them to be able to alert, like, hey, we started a new team meeting, a channel meeting, and I want to chat out so people know that's there, that's an option. Here's our team code. And I was telling you how you could give people a team code, and that code they'll be able to use to join. And here's a little extra tip and trick. The search feature, which is really robust, has all these actions. So if I do a / and I put in join, you actually can join, whoops, with a team code. It says just put in the code. And so you could give people this email alert as an owner saying, here, go to search / join and put in this team code, and that'll help people connect as needed. All right, team or team code. Okay, lots of other options in here. I want to point out channels as one other place for some really good tips and tricks. First tip and trick is for everybody, members and owners. And if you have a team with a lot of channels, you know how you can show or hide channels because they may or not be very helpful for you. So again, you can come to Team Sync and you can say, oh, I don't need this very often. I'm going to go ahead and hide it. But it's a lot of manual work, especially if there's so many channels in here. So what I like about using this ellipses to jump into manage the team is I can jump into channels and I can show all of them at once so much faster, or turn certain ones off, right? So it's a lot easier for me to manage that. The other thing is if you are an owner and you're setting up a team, you may have certain channels that you really want people to see. So for example, here's a welcome channel, and I really want to make sure that folks have access to this when they join the team because it has orientation information. It'll help them get connected. So it's set up to automatically show this channel when you join the team. And of course, they can hide it if they want to, but the point is they'll see it at least when they first join. So some great features in here to help us stay connected. And you know what? Here's another great tip that's available for everybody, members and owners alike. At the very, very bottom of your screen, there's a gear icon, which usually means more settings, right? And we'll go ahead and click on this. This has a list of all of your teams. And so if you wanted to have some ownership or some management of all your teams, you can find out, ooh, am I an owner? Am I a member? Am I watching it? Is it visible? Do I want to access information? Do I want to hide it? And also, is it private or public? So this is a nice way for you to kind of see all of them in one place. All right. As we are moving into teams and channels, it really gets into the next step of all these different apps. And a lot of folks use all kinds of apps to stay connected, right? And so maybe it's OneNote or Power BI or what have you. And One of the apps that we get asked about the most is Planner. People are really excited about Planner. It's kind of like Project Light, and it's a great tool that's built into Teams, it's integrated into Teams, and it's all about managing your tasks. And so I want to show you a couple things about the Planner specifically, and that has to do with this menu way over on the far right-hand side. There's an ellipses, and look for Planner. All right, it's going to jump you into a view that's going to aggregate all of your information. So now you can see all your tasks, your planner-based tasks in Teams, no matter what channel they may be in. And you can see the status, not started, in progress, completed. I'm going to go to activity. I can see items that are, what's happening, what are people talking about. Recent, all right, so what has recently been made or working on, and then all is actually going to show me a list of all the different planners based in the different teams or channels that we might have. So again, there's some great ways to help us dive in. I also want to point out there's a help menu. So people often have questions about how do I do this in Planner? How does it go deeper? And this has built-in help to help you learn more about Planner, leverage it better, or even share with other folks like, hey, did you know you could do this in Planner? And I want to point out in this ellipses, there's a lot of extra really cool apps in here. And so you may be a frontline user and you're using shifts. Maybe you use OneNote. I use OneNote a lot. I'm going to point out Who. This is another app that's really handy. The Who app lets you see folks in your organization so that you can connect, especially handy if you got a large organization and you're trying to connect with someone. You're like, who is that person? Um, Give me some feedback. Or if you're a contractor and you're trying to learn a lot of new people, or you're a new hire and you're trying to get connected. And then also with upcoming meetings, you can actually see who's attending the meeting, right? A lot of us are in so many meetings. How do we stay connected? So lots of options in there. And keep in mind that, of course, you can add these apps and you can also ellipses, you can uninstall. So you can explore a little bit as well. And let's go to our activity. Now, I bet a lot of you have used this activity. You know it's a great way to check messages and you can find out reactions and updates and such. But you can also use this to filter information. So my favorite uh, task of the day is to filter by app mentions. I do this all the time because I want to see, what do I have to triage? What's the most important? Who's trying to get my attention, right? But also you can filter on different items. So I'm going to go ahead and mention, hey, you could filter on apps. And then you could see different apps that are up to date, right? So lots of choices in here. And then that leads us into the search. So you might have tried this search already. I know that obviously we can search for folks, we can search for people. And over on the side, it says, hey, here's all the messages that have the word Alex. Here are people that are named Alex or have that as their name. Here are files that are connected to Alex. But did you realize there's also a search icon for the search? There's a filter. So I'm looking at messages and I actually want to filter this down. I want to filter by a team or by a channel or maybe by a particular date. So we have lots of options so we can dive deep and find what we're looking for. And of course, we saw that the search itself also has actions. So if I forward slash, I can find different actions that we could do. So for example, here's one called activity. I can find activity of folks that I'm connecting with. So let's see, what about Grady? Let's see what Grady's working on. Are there anything, these are things that Grady and I have in common. And so if he's one of your colleagues and you're trying to figure out, okay, what are people working on? This is a great way to help stay connected, because if Grady's working on it, then maybe you should be too, because he's one of your colleagues. So you're going to find quick links to things you're connected to. All right, so we have covered a lot of tips and tricks. Let's jump back into our PowerPoint here. And I just want to wrap this up. Where do you go from here, right? So we cover different strategies of how to use Teams. Some of these are features that might be new to you, or some of these are features that you've seen but maybe giving you some new insights of how to apply them, focusing a lot on how we can make conversations more engaging, more realistic. We also explored a lot of ways that we can find files and also just find information in our chats, in our projects, in our apps, in our teams, and then ways that we can simplify our workday using simple things like the menus or the filters in our search and in our alerts in there. I would love to give you more options to help you continue learn, and I'd love to give you some projects to do as well. So one of the options you can do is go to support.office.com. And if you go to support.office.com, it's going to open up in your language code, your country code. And obviously you can jump into Teams. Right here, you see the one for US English Teams. But I also would love to see you go in and start using the communication, the attachments to go deeper and start organizing your chats and such to make them more user friendly as well for your workspace. And here are some other resources that I want to give you access to. We have a lot of live training. So if you want to come back and take some more live training classes with us, we have the aka.ms/teams live training. Also, the support that we saw just a moment ago, support.office.com, is a great resource to help you get documentation about what's going on. The Quick Start Guide, Teams Quick Start Guide, can give you some more ways to help you connect and jump in. And I want to do a quick highlight for the customer stories and the Office 365 champions. So the customer stories, a lot of times people ask, hey, how can I find out what other people are doing in Teams? Are there other strategies that people have that they're using? So let me go ahead and show you an example of that. Okay. There's a website, and this updates all the time, but you can actually change the search. So let's filter this down specifically to Teams. Okay. And so now I'm seeing different customer stories, and then there are ways that you can filter it by industry. Hey, are you in banking? Are you in energy? Are you in higher education and government? And you want to find out, how are these organizations implementing Teams? What's working for them? Why did they make that choice? That can give you some really good insights in there as well. The other link I want to point out to you was the Champions program. So this was another link in that PowerPoint slide. I'll go back and show you that in just a moment. But one of the best ways to increase user adoption is to have peer collaboration. Teams is so collaborative based, right? It's sometimes peers are going to be a better messenger than actual IT or HR or what have you. So here is a free program that you can sign up for, and it's going to give you resources so that you can be an Office 365 champion, and you know that Teams is part of Office 365. So it's going to help you help everybody in your organization be better equipped to use Teams in general. And so again, we have lots of great resources here. You can take a moment to pause the screen if you want to capture any of these links for you. And I would love to see you continue learning more about Teams. So with that said, I just want to say thank you again for attending, and we look forward to seeing you in the next class.